次は私たちの番だから。神隠しにあった5人が順番に。
やめてよ。
ここにきっと何か。私の家にあった過去を映すカメラ。これでなくした記憶の手がかりがつかめるはず。まどかはどこ？
So Misaki does not have access to the use of lens. What's it called? Lens? What lens? want to lower the voice volume, but will also affect the volume for the characters, I believe. So we cannot do this. We started the game with so many points, and we ended with, and now we are lacking points. Right, there's a ghost fight after this. I remember now. Misaki's camera doesn't seem to have a very good background function, which probably explains why there was the catching lens that is available for the camera compared to Lucas camera. But investigate 203 Madagascar room. This chapter ends. In Ayako's room, I believe. Sorry, I'm just going to the voices are too scary.
This is a download from the BBC. For more information and our terms of use, go to www.bbc.co.uk/Radio 3.
I had a dream, which was not all a dream. The bright sun was extinguished, and
Camerati rurali, durante i mesi di gennaio, febbraio, marzo, aprile del 1938, pochi italiani levarono tante volte gli occhi al cielo quanto colui che ha l'onore e il piacere di dirigergli la parola in questo momento. Voi lo ricordate? Non una stilla d'acqua durante 4 mesi, pochissima neve sulle Alpi, quasi niente sugli Appennini. La terra riarsa come nell'estate, il grano ingiallito non cresceva, mai l'ombra di una nube sull'orizzonte implacabilmente sereno. Lo stesso fenomeno si verificava in altri paesi d'Europa, ma questo non ci riguarda. Erano lecite le previsioni più pessimistiche sui raccolti, fino al giorno in cui, nella prima decade di maggio, grandi prolungate piogge caddero benefiche in ogni parte d'Italia. Il grano ne ebbe immediato giovamento, il raccolto era salvo. Si era però nel frattempo delineata la solita speculazione straniera sulla fame che attendeva il popolo italiano e sulle combinazioni politiche che ne potevano nascere.
Auch eine andere Macht, die sehr gewaltig war in Deutschland, hat unterdessen die Erfahrung erleben können, dass die nationalsozialistischen Prophezeiungen keine Phrase sind. Es ist die Hauptmacht, der wir all dieses Unglück verdanken, das internationale Judentum. Sie werden sich nur erinnern an die Reichstagssitzung, in der ich erklärte, wenn das Judentum sich etwa einbildet, einen internationalen Weltkrieg zur Ausrottung der europäischen Rassen herbeiführen zu können, dann wird das Ergebnis nicht die Ausrottung der europäischen Rassen, sondern die Ausrottung des Judentums in Europa sein. Sie haben mich immer als Prophet ausgelacht. Von denen, die damals lachten, lachen heute unzählige nicht mehr. Die jetzt noch lachen, werden in einiger Zeit vielleicht auch nicht mehr lachen.
Ladies and gentlemen, my fellow Christian Americans,
should be TV. And I should not be running into any
again it
copyright
is my very great privilege
violations.
to
Hopefully,
welcome you
I think
to another impressive, patriotic
unless
mass
the
demonstration
right now, it's still
sponsored
alive.
by the German-American
this is-
Bund.
Cyberpunk. Wait, that's not open.
My fellow countrymen, we German-Americans
Oh,
are undividedly committed to the defense of the flag, Constitution, and sovereignty of our United States.
the next pregnancy case has dropped in
We
the
stand
program.
before you, loyal and law-abiding, to be here, dedicated, together with
This
you,
is found by
to the great task of our national and social reconstruction, and resolved, as you are resolved, to restore America to the true Americans and to the ideals and principles given expression in the great farewell address of George Washington.
Radio is simply
Free America.
so that
Since so many of our well-known opponents
we
can think of no more noble way of demonstrating their pseudo-Americanism than by attempting to answer our arguments with violence, disturbances may be planned for this evening. We earnestly call upon all of our guests to remain seated under all circumstances. If any rowdyism is attempted, leaving the task of keeping order to those responsible for it. I thank you.
We now come to the Pledge of Allegiance, and may I draw your attention to the fact that we have added one word to this pledge. That is the word undivided. You will kindly notice that. May I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, to rise from your seats and repeat with me in unison this famous pledge. Order! Attention! I pledge undivided allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Release.
We now find that Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini instead of waiting for the Jewish boycott to take effect, looked for and, to Mr. Holt's great discomfiture, found other markets for their country's products, thereby reducing the purchase of American goods in such countries too. So, my friends, by the good grace of our our labor agitators and their Jewish consorts, we all are being victimized by an incredible boycott policy, which is in effect nothing but an economic bankruptcy policy. The method of our Bund to combat this Jewish-inspired boycott is the effectively working German-American Business League, a league of Gentile American business houses which successfully diverts the purchasing power of our white American people from the boycott Jew to Gentile merchants. My friends, the Jew does not become as excited about pogroms in Eastern European countries as he does about legislation enacted in Germany or Italy, which harms no hair on any Jew's head, but deprives him of what the Jew Theodor Herzl calls the terrible power of the purse in these countries. Germany, without appreciable gold reserves, has succeeded in solving all her economic and social problems without borrowing a single cent from international banking institutions. Germany has stopped this business of borrowing and paying high interest ever since Adolf Hitler came to power in Germany. And ever since this was done, that country has been free of economic upheaval. We want to see the day, my friends, when it will no longer be necessary to give the unproductive Jew a cut on every financial transaction which he might make. We know that this can be achieved by observing the experience of these Central European countries, which have succeeded in recovering through financial sovereignty over their means of exchange.
We are today living at a time where every great fund or bankrupt lawyer is taking it for granted that he has to save the country from the terrible menace of Nazism. Usually, there are people with a rather shady background who all of a sudden discovered the 150% Americanism. I mean those people that cover themselves at night with the stars and stripes and who before breakfast sing the Star-Spangled Banner. And furthermore, you will find these gentlemen doing a lot of flag waving during the day and the good part of the night. Surely, have heard of these people? You can find articles about them in our daily, free and uncensored, democratic American newspaper. You will read and maybe understand how they are going to rid this country of that Nazi menace. By Nazis, they mean the members of the German-American Bund and their leaders. And usually, they have that splendid idea of having us all deported. Let me answer these gentlemen tonight that their efforts are of no avail, because we have never claimed to be Nazis, knowing very well ourselves that Nazism is something reserved for Germany and has no place in our country. The German Chancellor himself has many times proclaimed to the world that Nazism is not for export. Now then, if anybody has the idea to have us deported because for the reason that we have shed a little light on a certain race and the menace they mean to our own country, let me tell them it will be not so easy, for the reason that you will have to build quite a large fleet of ocean liners if you will deport the members of the Bund. And besides that, we wonder what they will do with those people that have been born right here in the United States of America. Those organizations that have been attacking us should rather get busy working out a plan to give work and bread to our 12 million unemployed. And I think the people of this country will ever be thankful to them. We as German Americans have the same rights as any other group in this country to take an active part in the development of our country, may they be of political or cultural or economic nature. That is not only our right, nay, our duty.
Now, what we're going on with this morning is the use of the respirator and a gas attack. Now, the first thing you would do is you'd hold your breath. The reason being, if you didn't hold your breath, you'd breathe in the poison gas and you'd be gassed. So that's the reason why you hold your breath.
Voici que le passe prélevé à contrôle. Il le lit, l'impose. C'est la même statue, et vous entendez sa voix. Vous avez entendu qui bouge en tenant le véritable self-filter et le murmure que vous entendez maintenant, c'est le murmure récité par les saluets là, silencieux.
If an attempt were made to change the situation by force in such a way as to threaten Polish independence, why then that would inevitably start a general conflagration in which this country would be involved.
The British Empire is represented on every continent. It has its own vast responsibilities, but it can no longer be the champion of international justice in general. That role was plausible in the 19th century when our navy swept the seven seas and afforded to this American continent the indirect protection under which its amazing expansion took place. Today, that is not possible. But for those of us who believe in the infinite value of the Christian civilization, what makes the situation grave today is the coalition of paganism and machinery. It is true, as Mr. Middleton Murray has reminded us, that the machine is the product not of the Indian or of the Chinaman, but of Christian civilization. The world is full of paradoxes, and that is one. Today, the products of the energy let loose by the Reformation and the Renaissance are at the command of men who, in their propaganda, deliberately foster hate, steal truth, and glorify God.
Was ist unser heutiges Deutschland? Nicht wieder schön und herrlich. Wenn ich euch hier blicke, weiß ich, mein Lebenskampf ist nicht umsonst gekämpft. Wir werden treu sein, wie jemals das Deutsche treu sein konnten. Immer wieder wird eine neue Jugend antreten,
immer wieder antreten und wird immer schöner sein, immer kraftvoller sein und wird immer gesünder sein und wird immer mehr Hoffnung bieten den lebenden Geschlechtern auf die Zukunft. Ich bin nicht der Klagende, ich bin nur der Warner. Ich bin nicht der Fürstende, sondern ich bin nur der Vorbereitende. Ich zittere nicht vor der Stunde irgendeiner Entscheidung, aber ich will sie sehen und ich will stark sein. Ich will die Füße fest in unserer Erde stemmen, um dem Ansturm nicht zu erliegen. Und ihr werdet neben mir stehen, wenn diese Stunde jemals kommen sollte. Ihr werdet vor mir, neben uns, Seiten und hinter mir stehen. Und wir werden in unserem Zeichen wieder singen.
And the dangers of our being dragged into war are in three directions. First, foreign propaganda to inflame our emotions and to mold our minds to war. Second, the preachments of our own mistaken officials and citizens which in effect support these propagandas. Third, steps taken by our government that while denying that they are intended to take us into war, yet entangle us with these very controversies, the end of which may be war. And here we can examine one of the methods of power politics, and that is propaganda. During the World War, propaganda was first developed into an actual weapon no less potent than the killing of men. When peoples and governments weigh the sacrifice of their sons, then truth and honesty and tolerance and justice are thrown to the wind if a lie will serve better. The Great War was the first time in history when all the powerful agencies of publicity and the manipulation of news were organized without moral restraint under the genius of skilled men. There were built up a skill and a technique in front of which every citizen was helpless to know the truth. And since that time, the radio has become an additional weapon. We ourselves, when we entered the war, imitated the others. We created great propaganda agencies. And no man dared to question or answer under that fierce organized condemnation. Now, propaganda has three directions. Internal to mobilize emotions, external to influence neutral nations, and aggressive to influence the enemy. From the beginning of the World War, I saw the development of the propaganda directed at the United States from both sides. I was so impressed that I collected this material for years. The War Library at Stanford University holds stack after stack of this emanation from every government at war. And in the light of what we now know really happened, it comprises the greatest collection of part lies on the face of the earth. It ought to be studied. Now, there are certain types of propaganda in motion today which fertilize our soul for our entry, soil for our entry into the war. We're told that we must join in war or democracy will disappear from the earth. That is a propaganda of the preparatory type. From the alliance of the democracies with several totalitarian states, that ideological issue seems a little confused. Now, my sympathies are with the democracies of Western Europe, but those democracies have resources to defend themselves. They comprise great empires of hundreds of millions of people with resources needed to secure their defense. Whether they preserve their democracies is a question of their own will. We're told that if they fall, we will be the next victim. I do not agree that they will fall, but if they do fall, the exhaustion of the dictators will be such that they'll leave us alone for a quarter of a century at least.
The alignment between Nazi Bolshevism and Soviet fascism is just what the world should have expected. Both are ruthless dictatorships founded on hatred and maintained by force and fear.
que nous allions engager avec la Russie, d'accord avec l'Angleterre, des conversations politiques et militaires. Et nous pensions qu'elles allaient aboutir heureusement lorsque, renversant brusquement sa politique et sa doctrine, la Russie a signé avec l'Allemagne un pacte qui lui permet de se dérober aux obligations que lui a imposées la politique, qu'elle a cependant toujours pudiquement acceptée.
No one knows what is going to happen within the next 24 or 48 hours. I don't think that either Chamberlain or Hitler really know at this minute. But one thing is very definitely sure. If the war starts, it will be Hitler who is the guilty party. I do not wish to deny that the unbelievable policy of the Western democracies has helped Hitler to this fortunate or tragic position. History will prove that most efficiently and conclusively. But I do not think I am too optimistic when I say that these democracies have definitely learned their lesson. It is the terrible tragedy of my little country that it had to be crucified to redeem the sins of others. Please do not consider me blasphemous when I say that. We may have war even before I finish this little talk, or we may have another attempt at negotiations. If there is even a vestige of the Munich spirit left to initiate these negotiations, they are doomed to be a dismal failure. The only possible chance of success without bloodshed is for Hitler to climb down from the Trojan horse on which he has galloped from Munich to Berlin, and then to Vienna, Memel, Prague, and so forth, and now towards Warsaw. From now on, he must walk, even walk backwards a bit. Let me be perfectly frank. I believe I have the right to be so. If Hitler attempts another bloodless victory for vulgar gangsterism, and the world, including the United States of America, let him get away with it, I have no illusions about the future of the European civilization. And what's more, we all deserve what is coming to us.
Hello, London. This is New York calling you. This is Bob Trout calling H.D. Kaltenborn in London. New York calling London. Mr. Kaltenborn, if you can hear us, we are ready for you now.
And here we are. We've been waiting for your call, and by one of those peripatetics that occasionally occur in even the best regulated radio, we've been hearing a raucous German voice for the last minute, while you have been waiting for a less raucous one from London. We understand that you know all about the further meeting of the Cabinet that is to take place at noon tomorrow. That you have heard that Mr. Neville Henderson, who has been here attending every Cabinet meeting that has taken place for the last 2 days, is to fly back to Berlin tomorrow with Britain's answer to Adolf Hitler's demands. Mr. Neville Henderson will remain for the further Cabinet meeting, which is to take place at noon tomorrow, but a reasonable guess would be that since he has attended all the previous meetings, and since his further evening undoubtedly is to give some further consideration to the reply and its implications, one would guess that it is probable that he will remain until after that meeting. The Cabinet here has issued an official communiqué announcing what I have just told you, and then added a phrase to the effect that the publication of the details of Adolf Hitler's demands is, quote, entirely unauthorized and inaccurate. Now I understand that you in New York have had certain details with reference to those demands, that you have been given to understand that Adolf Hitler's demands as presented and discussed by the British Cabinet include 4 separate items. And I should like to consider briefly with you those items. First, the return immediately to Germany of Poland's Polish corridor and of the city of Danzig, and the territory which has been included in the Free State of Danzig under the League of Nations Constitution. That is point number 1. Well, that, I think, is a reasonable point from Herr Hitler's point of view. After all, He has insisted that he must have Danzig, and his first demand was only for a road through the corridor. But those of us who studied that demand realized that, as he put it, really meant cutting the corridor off from Polish control and making it almost inevitable that the corridor should sooner or later fall to Germany, at least in good part. So this is what he asked of Poland several months ago, and of course, in addition, an outright demand for the cession of the corridor. Now, that, I should say, it is reasonable to assume Adolf Hitler would ask. Then, after making that demand, he proceeds in the second point that has been suggested and included in what he has asked, that he would be willing to participate in an international conference that would discuss disarmament and colonies. Disarmament, in the sense that Germany would be willing to reduce her armaments if other countries would do likewise. To discuss colonies, in the sense that Germany would be getting some colonies from somebody who was willing to give them up to her. Then the third point, an international conference which would discuss these points would, in Mr. Hitler's opinion, last a long time. Therefore, his Polish claims, that is the claim for Danzig and for the corridor, those claims would have to be satisfied before this international conference took place. And then finally, the fourth part of his presentation to the British cabinet is supposed to have been an assurance of German-British friendship as being natural and traditional and as responding to the desires of the two peoples. Well, I've talked briefly about the naturalness of demand number one for the corridor in Danzig. Now, secondly, as to the international conference, well, Hitler has never indicated that he has any preference for international conferences or any desire for them, nor has he indicated at any time that he is willing or eager to discuss the method of reducing armaments.
Die Lage zwischen dem Deutschen Reich und Polen ist zurzeit so, dass jeder weitere Zwischenfall zu einer Entladung der beiderseits in Stellung gegangenen militärischen Streitkräfte führen kann.
The situation between Germany and Poland has reached an impasse such that any more border incidents might lead to the outbreak of something more serious.
The news of Europe as it occurs. The world is now awaiting the arrival in Berlin of Sir Neville Henderson, British ambassador to Germany, who took off from England's Heston Aerodrome nearly 3 hours ago, flying to Berlin with the British cabinet's answer to German Chancellor Adolf Hitler. Now, during this broadcast period, we shall hear the latest word direct from the two key cities of London and Berlin as our CBS representatives speak to us across the ocean by shortwave radio. First, in London, waiting to speak to us now, is the Chief of Columbia's European Staff, Mr. Edward R. Murrow. And to hear Mr. Murrow, we switch you now to London.
This is London. Europe is all paradox these days. For instance, one of the few places in Europe where international railway traffic is undisturbed is the Polish corridor. Germany's transit arrangements continue to function without a hitch. Trains continue to cross the corridor without a hitch. And Germany is said still to be sending military transport over the line. Now, here in London today, the Chinese and Japanese ambassadors called at the Foreign Office. And they called together. And that's something that London hasn't seen for a long while. It's also just been announced that Germans have been instructed to leave Hong Kong. Croydon Airport will be blacked out tonight. And the Admiralty has forbidden the use of wireless transmitting apparatus from any seagoing ship in British territorial waters. And I should not be surprised to see certain steps taken during the next 24 hours to establish what would be called a voluntary censorship over certain other forms of communication. The first defense orders, or decrees, were issued here today. They cover a lot of territory. Power is given to order compulsory evacuation for both people and animals. In other words, if the government says go, you've got to go whether you like it or not. Compulsory billeting is provided for. And that means that if you had a house in the country with an extra room, the government might bill it without your consent 2 or 3 people in that room. Private premises may be taken over. Traffic on the roads may be regulated. and the carrying of cameras will be prohibited in certain areas. And there's another provision. It states that no person shall have under his control or liberate any racing or homing pigeons. Prices of foods and other commodities may be controlled. And the dispatch from the United Kingdom of material other than that handled by mail may be controlled or stopped altogether. There are more than 100 separate items in the list, and there will probably be others to follow. Well, those surprising Russians are still handing out surprises. Voroshilov, the war minister, says there's no reason why Russia should not supply the Poles with arms and materials, just as the Americans, and incidentally the British, have been supplying them to Japan for the last 2 years. The feeling is growing here that the agreement with Russia may, in the end of the day, do Germany more harm than good. We shall probably have more information on that point after the speeches in Moscow tonight. As you know, the House of Commons meets tomorrow at 2:45 London time. And I can tell you that the Prime Minister is being urged very strongly, not only to outline the recent exchange between Hitler and the British government, which so far remains a secret, but he has today been urged by certain opposition leaders to tell the whole story of the breakdown of negotiations with the Soviet Union. If he does tell that story, which will be in for further surprise, Mr. Chamberlain has been told that Parliament will provide a good sounding board, that a full, complete statement would convince doubters that he has no appetite for personal government and is prepared to defend Britain's actions in the ocean. Of course, what he says will, in large measure, depend whether or not will depend upon whether or not he has received Herr Hitler's reply to Britain's message, which Sir Neville Henderson is now taking to Berlin by air. On the whole, I should say that the possibility of avoiding war has not increased during the day. Government circles are, in fact, exceedingly pessimistic. But there is a general belief that the strategic position is improved, that Hitler is hesitating, that the Russians may betray the Germans. You are already aware of the reaction in Tokyo and Madrid as a result of Hitler's retreat to Moscow. We are not yet certain of its full effect in Rome. Italy still has only a quarter of her army under arms. And if war comes, and Italy stands with the Germans, she will suffer more terrible havoc than will Germany. There is still hope that Hitler may pause and think again. There is still the possibility of a conference. The people with whom I have talked in London today certainly haven't expressed any optimism, but their spirit is better. They believe the Germans are worried and uncertain, if not frightened, and that's a pleasant situation for most Englishmen. They think, rightly or wrongly, that they now have the initiative, that if war comes, they will win it. But that if we have a conference instead, the result is likely to be only a postponement. That view is reflected in the evening news, which says, what can Britain or France do to prevent war at the last moment, unless Herr Hitler takes some step toward calling off his dogs and agreeing, in the words of President Roosevelt's appeal, to refrain from any positive act of hostility for a reasonable stipulated period. Even if Herr Hitler did so agree, it would but postpone the day of reckoning so long as he is in his present mood, which is that of a wayward child who has never been crossed. So far as I can learn, the Poles have not been subjected to pressure by Britain. No one could truthfully say that the alliance with Poland has ever aroused any popular enthusiasm in Britain. Britishers know very little about Poland. The necessary historic and sentimental ties are missing. But the matter is not now so much one of Poland as it is of Britain's pledged word and the determination to move in one direction or the other out of this twilight of peace. Hitler has made his demand. Now he pauses. It is difficult to see how any solution is to be reached on Hitler's terms. That is to say, any solution that would provide anything more than a temporary relief. Now the Queen is returning from Scotland tonight, and the two princesses are remaining there. Everything is being prepared for 0 hour. Britain is moving up to the line, and I should be less than truthful if I fail to report that some people see it coming with almost a sense of relief. Those are the people who maintain that the retreat has gone on far too long, and that courage and determination are now required. And they feel that perhaps war is the only solution, and that the resulting world order will be better than the one we have fumbled with for the past 20 years. I don't know, but the decision must be made. And the folks here seem to think it will be made during the next 36 hours. I return you now to America.
That was London and the voice of the Chief of Columbia's European Staff, Mr. Edward R. Murrow. Now let's hear from the German capital, where high government officials are awaiting the arrival of the returning British ambassador. To hear the Chief of Columbia's Continental Staff, William L. Shirer, we take you now to Berlin.
Hello, America. Hello, CBS. This is Berlin. The sands are running fast. Tonight, here in Berlin, we should have a decision whether it's to be peace or war. It's just 8 minutes to 8 Berlin time, and Sir Neville Henderson, the British ambassador, is due to arrive any minute now from London. A big Mercedes car is waiting for him out at the Tempelhof Airdrome, and will rush him to Herr Hitler's chancellery in the Wilhelmstrasse as soon as he arrives. The outcome of this historic meeting is now in the lap of the gods. Although word has sifted through this afternoon that the British government cannot accept the demands which Herr Hitler made public last night, namely a return of Danzig and the corridor to Germany, the Wilhelmstrasse, when I left it a few minutes ago, was maintaining silence, preferring to wait until it knew what Ambassador Henderson brought back. The feeling in German government circles on the eve of this crucial meeting is still firm, and the entire press this evening maintains that Germany cannot and will not compromise, that the Reich will not budge an inch from its demands on Poland for the return of Danzig and the corridor. It is not entirely ruled out, of course, that the British answer, which it's believed contains certain counter-proposals, may necessitate a reply. But the tension has become so terrific that it does not seem possible to anyone here that it can long continue, probably not past tonight, without events taking a turn one way or the other, or as the Germans say, so oder so. In the meantime, Germany seemed already on a complete war footing today. Housewives stood in lines beginning early this morning to get their ration cards. It was the first time since the war that these cards had made their appearance, and the people who had hardly believed a couple of days ago that war was possible certainly looked grimmer as they stood patiently waiting for their cards. With true German efficiency, the rationing system swung into operation very smoothly. At any store today, if you wanted certain foodstuffs or soap or shoes, you had to show your card. Otherwise, you were politely turned down. The newspapers and the radio have assured the population several times today that there is food and clothing and soap and shoes and fuel enough for every German, that the rationing was only resorted to in the interests of fairness to all. But everyone taking the new measures by taking these measures with good grace, the people are told, they are helping to defend the freedom of Germany. Most papers praise the German woman for the calmness with which she has taken not only the rationing of foodstuffs and materials, but also the spirit with which she has seen her menfolk, husbands, sons, or fathers, off to the army in the last few days. The military took an ever-increasing part in the picture in Berlin as today advanced. Cars with high army officers sped up and down the Wilhelmstrasse, or down the Tiergartenstrasse to the War Ministry in the Bendlerstrasse. Many cars and motorcycles were requisitioned. I saw several civilian motorcyclists who had been called up with their vehicles. They received an army armband, and you could see them speeding through the streets carrying messages. Despite the needs of the armed forces, the gasoline situation improved today. I was able to buy 2 gallons a few minutes ago, which enabled me to get here in time for this broadcast. Men from the air service supervise the tanking up. Squadrons of big bombers have also been roaring low over the city in formation. In other words, though the talking stage has not yet been completely abandoned, the grim preparation for the worst goes on. I understand no trains from Germany crossed any borders today, but those foreigners trying to get out were able to proceed as far as the frontier and then either walk or get some kind of transportation to the other side of the border. Note that Germany has already assured Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, and Switzerland that it will respect their neutrality in case of war. But tonight we heard that Holland had decided to mobilize. Well, all depends now on the talks, which will be beginning here in a few minutes between Herr Hitler and the British ambassador. I hope to be on the air later tonight to tell you what I can about those talks. This is William L. Shire, and returning you now to New York.
In this moment of waiting, as all the world is awaiting the arrival of the British ambassador to Germany, Sir Neville Henderson, in Berlin, we've been listening to our correspondents in London and in Berlin speaking to us by shortwave radio across the ocean. And now here in New York, let's hear a few words from our CBS Foreign News analyst, Mr. Elmer Davis. Here's Mr. Davis.
You notice that Mr. Sharer said that in Berlin they're expecting Sir Neville Henderson in a few minutes. Well, the information from London is that he left only at 1 o'clock. I understand the normal commercial flying time between London and Berlin is 5 hours and 3/4, and while in a special plane he'll probably make better time, it seems unlikely that he can meet Chancellor Hitler before 5 or 6. Now, the most encouraging thing, certainly, in these broadcasts we have just heard, Mr. Scherer's remark that it is felt possible in Berlin that the British answer may necessitate a reply, which would at least mean a little more delay and a chance for possibly some satisfactory settlement of the situation. Mr. Murrow, you notice, said that in London it is felt that the possibility of avoiding war has not increased, which is a very temperate remark, but that the strategic position is regarded as improved. Now that, of course, refers primarily, I presume, to the situation of political strategy, but it's just possible that it may also refer to military and naval strategy as well. There were reports today of a possible mediation by Mussolini. They were emphasized in Rome, and there was indication that some satisfaction would be felt with such a move in Berlin. A Rome dispatch says that the Italian press, as if by signal, emphasized that all the world was looking to Mussolini to avert war. Well, of course, the Italian press usually does things by signal. Virginio Gaida, who is generally the spokesman for the government, wrote in the Giornale d'Italia that while the world is on the edge of a European catastrophe, even more insistent in general are the appeals being made to Premier Mussolini. A last-minute miracle is talked about. Direct intervention by Premier Mussolini is mentioned as a means for saving peace. Now, it seems to me conceivable that most of those appeals have come from Rome. We know from all evidence that's come to us that the Italians are very far from enthusiastic about all this. They have nothing to gain by a war against Poland, with which their own relations have always been friendly. And if they should enter into the war, they are far more exposed than Germany to attack by England and France.
Attention of the world is focused upon Europe and the events which are transpiring there. In order that the public may be apprised of the latest developments on the unsettled continent, Mutual brings you from time to time special transatlantic broadcasts. Tonight we present direct from Berlin, Germany, an up-to-the-minute commentary by Sigrid Schutz, correspondent for the Chicago Tribune and Mutual's representative in Berlin. For Miss Schultz's broadcast, we now take you direct to Berlin, Germany.
Mutual Broadcasting Company. Hello, Mutual Broadcasting Company. This is Sigrid Schultz, the Berlin correspondent of the Chicago Tribune, speaking from Berlin. In the same hotel where 6 and 8 years ago, members of the international press used to assemble to talk with the leader of an important political party of Germany by the name of Adolf Hitler, the assembly began tonight to wait for the outcome of a historic meeting between the same Adolf Hitler, the anti-Nazi and the emissary of the Chicago,
August 28th.
All day, there had been two topics of conversation. When does Henderson arrive in Germany? And how big was the ration of food you managed to get from your grocer in Berlin? Yesterday, in the Chancellery, activity had been carried on as usual. When we passed there this noon, we caught glimpses of generals and admirals report to Adolf Hitler, the supreme commander of all Germany's armed forces. General von Reich, chief expert in military motorization, swept in with his monocle stuck to his eye at just the right angle. Hitler's personal adjutant, Schultz, his minister in the Chancellery, Lammers, nearly passed by unnoticed, or to be accurate, unrecognized. They were wearing the field gray of the German army instead of the uniforms in which one is accustomed to see them. The protector of Germany's new conquered provinces, Baron von Neurath, arrived, as usual, a stately figure. The crowd cheered him. Some got their courage up and asked, "Will we manage it once more, Mr. Minister?" Norbert merely smiled indulgently and moved on. The crowd continued its guessing and discussions about the problem of whether or not Hitler could enforce the return of Danzig to the Reich without bloodshed. Women and young girls listened feverishly watching the scene. I do not killed over, to a great extent, out of excitement. Red Cross nurses provided them with a glass of water and a few quietening pills, and the girls went on. Some decided it would be wiser to go home. The climax of the day was reached tonight when, in the bright floodlight of Wilhelmplatz, the car of the British ambassador rolled up to the heavy brass doors of the chancellery. In the court of honor, the guards of honor present arms, and Sir Neville Henderson, trying to look as unconcerned as a blasé English gentleman should, looked at the chancellery with a British message, on which everybody in Berlin believed the immediate future of Europe depends. He was received by Hitler in the presence of Hitler's foreign minister, Herr von Ribbentrop. The conversation lasted for almost an hour and a half. The longer it lasted, the more pleased the German officials waiting in the historic hotel across the street with the press became. Occasionally, one or the other of them would slip out across the street and get in touch with some friend hidden in the vastness of the chancellery or possibly in one of the ministries nearby. Every time they came back from their serious calls, they would claim to be more satisfied with the outlook. They would say, "A door has been left open for negotiations." That was the first report. Then they'd have another glass of beer, another leg of roast partridge that has just come into season, a few more spoonfuls of sauerkraut with pineapple and mashed potatoes, and another would come in and report what he had dreamed. He would say, "The way things are going, we think we can now look forward to the proclamation of the union between Danzig and Germany in a very short time, maybe tomorrow." Later in the evening, after the official bulletin about Sir Neville Henderson's visit to Herr Hitler became known, it was learned that the Germans, from what they called oral statements of Sir Neville Henderson, made it quite clear that there is some possibility to negotiate. Germans whom I have found to be very well informed in quite a number of years declared that in the course of the conversation, Hitler immediately answered some of the questions presented to him by Henderson for Mr. Chamberlain. Rumor had that Sir Neville Henderson himself would immediately fly back to London with Hitler's answers. This was found to be untrue. The representative of the British government, Mr. Boyle, who had arrived with the British ambassador, intends to fly to London early tomorrow morning, the same government plane as he and Henderson arrived. This will enable him to give the answers of Herr Hitler to Chamberlain, who can then use them as basis of talks in the British Chamber. And again, negotiation can be resumed. A further cause for optimism in the eyes of Germans tonight is what they call the abating of the acts of post-terrorists against the German population in Poland today. This belief indicates that the Poles are trying to prepare the atmosphere for negotiations with the Germans. In the Berlin restaurants and coffee houses, rumors were flying round that the Polish Foreign Minister Beck would be coming to Berlin tomorrow or in the very near future. This rumor lacks foundations. They show how optimistic the masses are. Only the women were less optimistic. They rushed to their grocers and their dairymen early this morning with their brand new ration cards. They found that of the 2 ounces of coffee which they are allowed per head of the family, 2/3 are for coffee substitutes. If you know how fond the German housefrau is of her coffee, you will realize she is for a wider economic cooperation between England and Germany progressed so far that when the friction into Poland stops, a great business boom should be expected for all concerned. France figures less prominently in the discussions, despite the publication of Mr. Daladi's and Herr Hitler's letters. But tonight, official quarters were quite worried about a statement issued by the official news agency in France. They feared that Hitler might vent some of its contents. But this worry was not taken seriously. Now I return you to America.
The German Wireless announced tonight the German government's reply to a British communication and gave the German government's proposals for a settlement of the Polish problem in the following 16 points. The German announcer who read out these proposals concluded by saying, "The Führer and the German government have waited for 2 days in vain for a reply to these proposals and therefore regard these proposals as practically rejected."
It is becoming increasingly clear that peace by fear has no higher or more enduring quality than peace by the sword. There can be no peace if the reign of law is to be replaced by a recurrent sanctification of sheer force. There can be no peace if national policy adopts as a deliberate instrument the threat of war. There can be no peace if national policy adopts as a deliberate instrument the dispersion all over the world of millions of helpless and persecuted wanderers with no place to lay their heads. There can be no peace if humble men and women are not free to think their own thoughts, to express their own feelings, and to worship God. There can be no peace if economic resources that ought to be devoted to social and economic reconstruction are to be diverted to an intensified competition in armaments, a competition which will merely heighten the suspicions and fears and threaten the economic prosperity of each and every nation.
So, liebe Jungen, weißt du, was ich höre? Bravo, sag mal, bei dir ist ja endlich doch draußen gefallen, weißt du? Das kannst du miterleben, was wir für eine interessante Zeit haben. Und große Kundgebung aus dem ganzen Reich kannst du mit anhören. Das wollte ich doch schon immer. Mir kann jetzt keiner mehr was vormachen. Hier in Serie ist alles aus erster Quelle. Ja, vielleicht kann ich auch ab und zu mal wieder ausländische Sender hören. Die ausländische Sender willst du hören? Auslandsnachrichten. London zum Beispiel. London? Ja, London. Kannst du mir nicht sagen, wie man das bekommt? Ich weiß zwar nicht, wie du London bekommst, aber was du bekommst, wenn du London bekommst, das weiß ich. Was dann? Kittchen. Ah, Kittchen. Sogar Zuchthaus. Auch wenn es keiner merkt? Ob das einer merkt oder nicht merkt, das spielt doch gar keine Rolle. So was tut man als guter Deutscher nicht. Ja, man muss sich doch orientieren, was draußen vorgeht. So natürlich. Die ausländischen Sender, die sagen die reine Wahrheit. Ne? Klar. Ja klar, du Döskopf. Hast du noch niemals etwas von dem Nachrichtensystem unserer Feinde gehört? Ja, aber nicht klar, aber dann müsstest du wissen, dass alles nur darauf abzielt, unsere Widerstandskraft zu schwächen. Herr Lott, ich bin doch alt genug, um unterscheiden zu können, was wahr ist und was nicht. Ach, immer noch wurde wegen Abhörens ausländischer Sender zu 2,5 Jahren Zuchthaus verurteilt. Siehst du, was habe ich gesagt? Ja, aber Musik kann ich doch hören. Paris, schicke Musik, Pariser Luft, nackige Mädchen. Was? Du, das ist auch verboten. Du kannst deine Tanzmusik auch von deutschen Sendern hören. Pass mal auf. Da ist das nicht herrlich. Das alles nur für 2 Mark im Monat. Oh, für 2 Mark, das ist doch blöd. Ja. Ob ich damit Ermäßigung finden kann. Warum willst du denn Ermäßigung haben? Ja, weil ich doch jetzt kein ausländischer Sender mehr hören darf.
The evacuation of British children is going on smoothly and
Alright, I'm going to end the stream here. And so for anyone that is watching, thank you for being here. I hope you have a nice rest of your day. And I will see you next stream. Bye for now.